We are the Keyboard Samurai, a podcast focused on sharing insights to help those working in cybersecurity companies, be them technology or services. Each session, your host, Will Klusovsky, aka Will Clue, sits down with professionals in our industry to illuminate topics that will help your security biz, team, or self be better. Let's hack into it now. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another great episode. Today, I am joined with Heather, who has become a good LinkedIn friend. We exchange a lot of good comments. I have a lot of similarities of mindset, so I thought it'd be cool to have her on. So,
Hello.
Heather, why don't you give us the 20-30 seconds of who you are and why we care?
Oh, yeah, that. I'm Heather Noggle, 25 plus years, we're not going to name them, in technology and an HR career before that. So I've been here a while. I've seen the evolution of absolutely everything from no computers in the classroom to where we are today. So hopefully that gives some perspective of both the human and the people side of where we are.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, I stopped putting a specific number on it, and I just say decades now.
Decades.
It's just getting old sucks, but it's okay. So we're going to talk about how firms can get a leg up on kind of building that next level of talent. I love these talent conversations because everybody has very strong opinions about them, and hopefully anybody that can benefit from listening to you tell your stories hopefully helps out for everybody else in the industry as well. So I guess if looking at the beginning, what does that, what does the next pool of talent look like to you? What is that next level? Kind of give us your idea, your lay of the land and what we should be looking at and thinking on.
So from the people we're looking for perspective, I think what we need are a mix of technical and people skills. And so I think today's technicians are emphasizing those tech skills because they are deeply important. We need people who can plug in and do their work. But we're also finding that when they are needing to become the next level up of people, they also need the people skills. And so whenever I would do training, it would always be both. So I was an adjunct just once. And that was where we emphasized the mix. It was A plus core too. And so that was the software side, and there were some security awareness pieces in there, et cetera. So I think that's what the organizations are going to be looking for, is people who have both sets of skills, even in the early positions, like experience in the work and then those soft skills or power skills.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking about this actually pretty much every day it comes up. There's always you get promoted to manager or leader, and then you don't get trained how to actually be a manager and a leader. I just
And there's
did
a difference between management and leading. We lead people, we manage things, and we don't want to mix those up.
No, that's actually a great point too. Because there's the managing of things and tasks and whatnot, and then there's actually leading the team, which I just did a couple of presentations on career planning myself, and that's a big that's probably the part I harp on a lot, besides learning the business, which is when you become a leader, your job is you're no longer the technical expert. You have to go to meetings. You have to make sure your team has what it needs to succeed. You go around and sing praises to your team. And you've got to change. You got to have a different mindset for sure.
Yes, you do. And that's very important to understand that. And if we can, to prepare our workforce for what's coming next.
Right.
So
So
in
how do
your
we
career
prepare?
progression.
What have you seen work really well?
An organization that is ready to retain its talent is an organized organization. And I know that's silly because organizations are supposed to be organized, but we've seen a lot of chaos in different companies. And so a really well-developed company is going to offer training, and it's going to know that career progression within its own company. And it's also going to know where it lacks it and still offer training. So I like to say, I do some workforce talks. I like to say that we need to provide the same opportunity, not necessarily going to have the same interest, if we're training and for the very junior entry level person and for the very senior person. It shouldn't matter whether you're 22 or 62. There still needs to be an opportunity to do some skill adding, and that will help. Now, the organization can obviously say, and we need this particular skill most of all, and prioritize that, but still just the idea that there's a culture of learning.
Right. Well, and I think having that more well-rounded employee plays better. I know in my experience, especially doing, CISO type stuff,
Hmm.
We talk a lot about, the CISO is not a technical expert. They have to go around and talk to the different party, like chief inside selling officer, go talk to the other organizations,
Yeah.
help them understand why we're doing this and why it's beneficial to them. So I think the businesses in general should be happy to have those more well-rounded individuals. Do you have any idea, like, why is it not happening? Why are they not doing it?
They're not ready to do it. I think it's not a priority. If you're always putting out fires, training your people doesn't tend to be a priority for you. So I think that that would be the answer usually when you start to figure the really big companies. A lot of them are battleships, meaning they're not going to sink, but they're not really doing too well in their movement either. They're floating. So small companies, if they're growing and they're growing in chaos, they're going to struggle with this as well. It seems like with everything, the medium-sized businesses that really have a handle on things, they can offer the training and employ the people and still have meaning and culture and vision, mission, and values and do all that. So I think it's
Right.
deeply important, though. I think it's
Well,
good for the culture.
yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head, like the culture aspect of what it is. Because I've, again, seen, like you said, a lot of the
Mhm.
mid-market and smaller businesses have a really good culture, and they'll have good training opportunities, and they want those well-rounded individuals, where the larger enterprises are kind of like, it's a
Yeah.
piranha, like killer bee, like either figure it out on your own and become a better leader, or we'll get rid of you and replace you with somebody who will.
Yeah. Do that stuff at home. That's not really what you're looking for as far as at least retaining good people because they may come to you and work for you for a while, but that's not their end goal. It shouldn't be their end goal if that's the way they're going to be treated. That's not how we are doing business and government and nonprofits and everything in the year 2025 and beyond. We're going to see more and more of the values of Gen Z come into the organizations, and they're just not going to take that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Like, I have 2 Gen Z children,
Me
and,
too.
they've had more jobs than I have, because they don't put up with anything. Like, they literally, and to their credit, like, I won't get into all the details, but, essentially, when one of my daughters was hired, told she was gonna do one thing, and on the first day, they told her she's doing all this other stuff, and she was like, "No, see ya."
Yeah, it's just dude, I think you've probably seen that meme where they've got everything in the job description in the kitchen sink, and then you look over here, that's the interview, and then the actual job is just Excel.
Yeah. That's
You seen that
the
one?
job description with all,
Mhm.
yeah.
The
Here's the
Excel.
actual job.
Yeah.
Excel. Well, even in, like, yeah, that's crazy. So I guess, how do we, so obviously organizations have to be ready for it, but, well, like,
Mhm.
what steps do they take? What kind of stuff should they be looking at doing? What kind of like, if I've got a business and I'm asking Heather what I should be doing, what kind of things are you going to tell me?
Oh, if you let me talk to your HR department, they'll get an earful. And a lot of it is they have to do some convincing and they have to look at what's coming ahead. And they're not necessarily technical people. I was when I was in HR. However, one of the things we have to do with these tech jobs is understand that they change more frequently than, say, your custodians, your groundskeepers, and even your managers. The thing, and then you really want to accelerate the change, start looking at your cybersecurity people different than you do your programmers and your IT technicians, et cetera. Those positions, the software developers, the IT technicians, there's usually a pretty good career path available. You can go Google that or take a look and say, if I wanted to build, if I'm a growing company and I want to build this in, I might have, programmer analyst 1, 2, 3, 4. I might have a senior then of the same thing. Maybe only collapse that down to 4 different levels, but then you've got a commensurate salary structure with that too. Cybersecurity, you look at that, you just kind of throw up your arms and go, well, I don't know. There's all this entry level stuff, and then there's this thing called a CISO, and I don't know what that is in the middle. So that's difficult. But I want to go back to the main point of this, which is we need to know what these job descriptions are going to be, what people need to know and do with that, and we need to know what qualifications they need. And these have got to be pretty accurate. So that means we need to be assessing these more frequently. So if you look at HR, there's usually going to be a job classification from which the job description is going to come. And there's 2 types of job descriptions. The first is this is how we're classifying the job to justify its pay. The
Mhm.
second one is I got to hire somebody. This is what that person does. And ideally, those are both accurate, but they're going to differ a little bit. You're going to base the hiring job description off of the general, here's how we pay people job description. So those need to be accurate, up to date, and reviewed far more frequently than non-technical jobs. And if you're in cybersecurity, I would say those even need to be more frequent than general tech because everything changes. It changes so rapidly.
Well, in
So
the org the
that's not
struc
a popular opinion, by the way. I'm gonna interrupt you. I tried
no,
to
no.
open a business line of this, and nobody wanted to hear it 2 years ago. So maybe they're ready. I don't know.
No, but you're right, 'cause even the organization, like, if you, the structured organization of the security organization is always very different. What people work and what they do could be different, especially if you look at things like, vulnerability management skills and patch management. That could be in the infrastructure IT team, or that could be in the security team, or it could be in both, right? And then one CISO builds his org one way, and another CISO builds theirs a different way. Um, yeah, that's
Mhm.
interesting. I feel like I've I've never had much faith in HRIS systems.
Oh,
I've,
well, let's
I've
not go there. Yeah.
well, because like I've been that person who's like, in the system, your title is this and your pay is that, but on my
Mhm.
business card, it's a different title and a different job description.
I predate those systems. I actually wrote a job tracking system in the 90s. So my HR career was in the 90s. That'll date me a little bit. But there were no applicant tracking systems. We barely had our cutting edge tech and access that we were tracking our jobs with. But that was a much more human hiring time too. You could really take your time, assess what you need, and you were not interviewing the entire world. You were interviewing maybe 10 people tops for a really popular job, and much simpler time in that too. So that's another level of the things we're talking about here. You're going to get 400 to 1,000 applications, and so there's a temptation to just weed out, but based on some keyword. I don't think that that's necessarily wise practice either, because you could have the very best person applied who just left off a keyword.
Mm.
So that's that too. That's why we don't want to go into that place we just went. So let's come out of that dark place.
Well, the other thing too that I've noticed, and I think most people in our industry have experienced, like, the job description says one thing, the
Yeah.
TA tells you one thing, and then the actual interview is a different thing. So
Mhm.
how do we rationalize, like, how do we fix that problem?
If you got the answer of how to fix humans, then you're probably going to fix the entirety of the cybersecurity problem and all the money problems, et cetera. That's just, unless that's a priority of the organization, that we present a united front, you're not going to have one. That's just human interpretation on the same words. And that's where a lot of things happen in miscommunication, is we all see the same words and maybe we read half of them, but
Mm.
we interpret them differently. And if we don't make an intentional effort to say, this is what this means and this is what we're going to do because of it, then there's going to be difference.
Yeah, that's tough. I just so frustrated with it. It's like I don't like you said, the to me the answer is simple, but because it's usually one of the three humans in that process loop is wrong, lazy, ignoring,
Hmm.
whatever, for whatever reason, or doesn't know, unaware, too timid. Because I think about, a hiring manager who doesn't necessarily know what their team does and asks for somebody with 2 years of experience and a CISP, which requires 5 years of experience to get the CISP,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So they don't understand that, and the
Hmm.
CAHR people don't know any of that, because they're like, well, that's not their
Right.
gig. So somebody needs to step up there and kind of, like, I don't know, raise their hand, fix the problem. It's annoying to me for sure.
And it's pervasive. That's one of those great jokes that you see is, I need somebody with 5 years of experience for my 2 years that I've stated. You're absolutely right. And I do want to just touch on one thing too with the commensurate experience. So back in that HR career, the early part of it, I was working for a university. And one of the really cool things they did is, for most jobs, if you didn't have a 4-year degree, but you had 4 years of experience in that field, it would say a bachelor's degree or 4 years. You could translate year by year by year. So if you were almost at your degree, they would count a year of experience for that final year of your degree. And I thought that was one of the best things, that most jobs truly, the work experience will mean more than just a degree. When you start to get, in cybersecurity, you start to get into the manager leader positions, then I can understand the need for a degree or specialized training that might be commensurate with that degree, because we start to see that. But Boy, we have a community college here. They put out graduates in 2 years who start, some of them with no computer experience whatsoever, and they walk out with 3, 4 relevant certs and the ability to talk to people in just that short period of time, just ready to go in to get some experience so that they can get the jobs. A lot of them do have to go into IT jobs to get some of that actual how we have a workflow in an organization if they're missing that. But if they've come in from another industry, they may not even need that.
Yeah.
So second career people, a lot of those.
Yeah, that transit like I know I predict within the next decade, hopefully sooner, the whole like college degree requirements for entry because
Mhm.
we can argue the validity, the value of a degree across a lot of different aspects of things, but like most of the stuff that I've seen from a cybersecurity perspective and even an IT perspective are all
Mhm.
pretty like high level cursory. Like you just tend to get better education at tech school sometimes
Right.
even.
Oh, I agree. I think that there are very practical ways to approach that four-year degree too, and I told my own children, "Please hack that. However you
Yeah,
do it, have somebody else pay for it because it isn't gonna be me."
yeah,
I'm much
100%.
nicer about it than that, but I have a young adult who has a sales job and does school. So,
Right.
hack the system.
Yeah,
It's
and I
good.
say that with somebody who has a master's in information security management. Because I had to, because at the
Mhm.
time, I wanted to
Yeah.
be a CISO, I wanted to be an executive, and they were like, "Well, this is what you have to do, either get a technical master's or an MBA," and so I got the technical, and then I did, like, an executive MBA, because you needed that too, but now and I I'm not gonna say you need that to lead. I think depending on the experience you have, for me, it's capability over experience, right? Are you capable of doing the job and
Mhm.
can you demonstrate that you are capable of doing the job? Because somebody could have been doing that job for 10, 20 years, but if they've been doing it wrong or not the way that you want it done, that experience is
Mhm.
not valuable for your organization.
That's another point too within an organization has to be able to evaluate when people are in the wrong jobs. And so that can mean one of two things. We can say, "Oh, you're an excellent person, you're in the wrong job," and get you another job, or you might be made available to industry.
Made available.
Yeah, that's from a
Um,
book called Fierce Conversations. That's her euphemism.
I like that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned career paths because I think that's important. And again, that's something I had actually just talked about telling when I was talking to individuals in cybersecurity. Like you need to have like with you and your mentor or mentors, like you should have your own career path figured out, your journey that you kind of mapping. But should also have one with the company you're working for, right? They should be able to tell you where you're going to get promoted to and what the opportunities are. Like, do you see that a
No.
lot regularly?
I don't, and that ties into I mean, if you work it backwards, you have people who in these mid-size and big organizations and small ones too, people retire. So if you're not taking the knowledge, skills, abilities, and lessons learned from the people who are retiring and transferring those to the other people, then how do we even know what we need to retain and what's ready to go? You had talked about some people who've been tenured in their jobs, but they're not doing things that are helpful in the organization. So that's another way to uncover that as well. So a person retires, maybe we need 65% of what's in that person's brain, and we only have 30% documented. So there's some opportunities there in determining career paths for people and also just for workforce integration so that people who are more senior in their jobs can be working with people who are junior and make sure that the knowledge flows both ways. Because there are certainly things that people who've been in their jobs a long time can learn, much of that about technology. That's
Right.
always been the case. So that's a way to get people multi-generational working together. And I know that's a little bit different than what you asked.
No, that's great because that makes it's like that's another reason to do it, right? So if you think
Mhm.
about again, a good culture should care about their employees and if you want to retain employees, to me, having a career path for them is like one of like day one obvious stuff. But if you need
Mhm.
another reason to have to have a career path for them, think about what you're retiring or you're leaving, you're exiting people are going to be like. Those key roles, especially that are your main
Mhm.
mission accomplishing individuals.
I think that with emerging technologies, we're going to be creating jobs we don't even know about yet. So that's really hard for tech to say, okay, here's your career path in 10 years. They're
Mhm.
going to be, who could have predicted that in just generative AI, when it would emerge for the masses and what it would mean to people talking about prompt engineering, like that was a thing 3 years ago. So some of that in tech is harder to do than it is a
Mhm.
career path for a person who is doing business management, for example. So
Right.
I still think we need to try. And again, we go back to the classification and the salary and making sure that's up to date and being really good about what is it this job's going to do so that your son or daughter, Gen Z, doesn't walk off the job first day to tie
For
that
sure.
bag. Hmm.
But well, the AI thing is interesting because I just saw, I can't remember who put it out, but it was like it was a quadrant of like most needed desired
It
skills
might have
kind
been
of thing.
me.
Yeah, but it had like, AI is like way over here and programming is now like way down here.
Okay.
So you can see the shift in like,
Hmm.
needing to have development skills versus AI skills changing. So
There was
that
one of those for 2030, and almost all of the really, really big skills in the quadrant that's so desired, they're almost all people skills.
yeah, well, that's the yeah,
Mhm.
100 which is the stuff we don't train people how to do.
I have one of those books from, like, my master's program. I didn't finish, but I've got the organizational communication book from 1991, so it's entirely without the influence of, connected computing.
Right.
And just I started thumbing through that too, and it just a different way of looking at people and managing because the pace of business was not so immediately global and not so fast.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah,
That's the
I'm
thing.
trying to imagine going back all those years and looking at where am I gonna be and what am I gonna be doing. This would not have been it. That's,
No,
I think, where I'm leaning.
you wouldn't have predicted this. No,
No.
no doubt, for sure.
Mhm.
Well, Heather, I could talk to you forever.
Yes.
If people wanna find you on the interwebs, where can they go?
LinkedIn is pretty easy. My name is Heather Noggle, and I think that'll be in your notes. And so I have my named site too, heathernoggle.com. That's a good way to take a look at my speaking and writing. And then my business is Code Stack, which is literally code and I and stack, but without the K. 'Cause I was a
Oh,
software
outstanding.
developer for forever.
Cool. Yeah, I'll have all this stuff in the context. I
Awesome.
appreciate your time so much today. Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for enjoying Keyboard Samurai Podcast. If you'd like to engage, find Will on LinkedIn at /WillClue or visit at willclue.me. That's WILKLU.me for more info. Disconnecting now. Synac you later.